I record this message in what I fear are the last moments of my life. My only hope is that, if this transmission makes it home, it will be taken seriously. My name is Glean. I was the commander of the 4th Piety Band, and my name is known across my world. For years, we pirates attacked trade routes and foreign worlds freely. I'm sure this part will be censored if this message is ever broadcast, but I must speak the truth. We acted with the silent or open approval of the ruling council, depending on where we were raiding. In some cases, we attacked places the government didn't officially care about, so they didn't interfere. Nobody cared what happened in those zones. Sometimes we acted on our own, but often we were simply doing what the leadership allowed us to do. You may hear screams in the background. I ask your forgiveness. The smoke is seeping in. My time is short, so I will be brief. We raided the planet Terra because it appeared defenseless and weak. A species that would sacrifice mature, productive adults just to protect their young? Ridiculous. Especially when they could simply produce more and seem to enjoy the act of reproduction whenever possible. When humans first entered interstellar space and made contact with our enemies, they likely had no idea that a trade alliance was just a clever disguise for invasion. But once they accepted, we thought it was easy prey. They had no large military fleets, no formidable space stations, and no interplanetary defense systems. They had only just started designing plans to harvest stellar energy. In short, they were vulnerable, so we struck hard. We bombed their capitals, obliterated their bases, and reveled in the destruction just as we always had. It was routine, almost a celebration. Their worlds fell easily at first. But we made one mistake that changed everything. During a raid, one of our soldiers became irritated by the sound of a human infant crying. Their young emit a piercing, dreadful wail, and in his frustration he shot the child while it was cradled in its mother's arms. We didn't think much of it. After all, we believed they could simply produce another. That belief was our greatest error. The mother, overcome with grief and fury, lost all sense of reason. She attacked our armed squad with nothing but her bare hands. Though she was shot 16 times, she managed to beat one of our soldiers to death using his own weapon. That's when we discovered the humans' terrifying truth. They remember stories. They tell them. They record them. And they pass them down like sacred texts. The moment one of our officers killed an infant in its mother's arms, and the mother's revenge was captured and spread across their networks. That single act ignited a storm of rage across their entire species. I lost 4 companies in a single day to the retaliation it sparked. Then, in another foolish decision, one of my officers declared we would kill more of their children if they did not surrender. He thought it would break their will. Instead, it proved to them that we were monsters. From that point on, they saw us as a threat to their young, and when humans believe something threatens their children, they will go to the ends of the universe to destroy it. Gunfire echoed through the halls. Screams were silenced one by one. Outside the door, I could hear human voices shouting, closing in. You must understand, this rage wasn't aimed at just my band. Humanity decided our entire species was a threat to their young. The last intercepted transmissions we received confirmed that the Keelan Confederation, once neutral, had begun supplying humans with weapons and technology to aid their war effort. Humanity wasn't just angry. They were united, relentless, and evolving. Their homeworld descended into a frenzy of hatred against us. No one cared that we stole their resources. Killing one of their adults caused outrage, yes, but murdering their children shattered something fundamental in them. They stopped thinking rationally. Their survival instincts twisted into something primal and terrifying. I tried everything, negotiating, offering trades, issuing warnings, even threats. None of it worked. In fact, every attempt to reason with them only strengthened their resolve. Whatever you do, if you can hear this, if you can still stop it, do not target human children. You'll doom all of us. We thought it would be easy. We were wrong. They turned our crimes into legend. The sound of a crying baby, the flash of a pirate weapon, the scream of a mother. That sequence became a ritual prelude before every speech, every debate, every battle. It played in the shipyards being constructed around the world, in the training grounds of their unified infantry forces, and in their mech factories. It echoed through every base, every simulation, every operation. And as the humans prepared for war, they sent reports, regular updates of their military buildup, to the Zalian Confederation. But with those transmissions came something unexpected: cultural data, stories, songs, histories, films, poems. Their civilization spilled outward. The Zalian were deeply disturbed not by their weapons but by their imagination. Their horror stories were grotesque, not because of alien invaders or technological marvels, but because their monsters were utterly impossible: immortal ghosts, unkillable demons, entities that shattered the laws of physics. That was what frightened humans. Only something divine or cosmic or unimaginable could terrify them. Anything less was simply manageable. If it couldn't obliterate a planet, it wasn't worth fearing. That's what shook the Zalian most. One of their anthropologists trembled as he confessed his fear. If humans only fear gods and monsters, what does that make us to them? They had seen the mother kill our soldier with his own gun. They'd seen parents butcher pirates with farming tools. One father dragged a raider behind a primitive two-wheeled vehicle until only scraps of flesh remained. He handed those remains to our ambassador with calm indifference. They're not sane, they're not rational, and now they believe deep in their collective consciousness that our species wants to harm their children. I'm not sure there's a word for what they've become. They are suicidal in defense, homicidal in vengeance, and worst of all, they are united. They don't have rigid social castes. Anyone can do anything if they're determined. One of their pilots was asked how they destroy a ship that jams AI control systems. He said, "We'll just use live pilots and blow it up anyway." When reminded that signals would be blocked, he simply shrugged. "We'll figure it out." That's what terrifies me most, not their hatred, not their technology, but their adaptability, their obsession with victory. 3 months later, we gave them their first chance to take the front line. We thought they'd hesitate. Instead, they volunteered eagerly. Our ships were piloted by humans, but not in the way we intended. Their fighters skipped along planetary atmospheres like pebbles on a pond, broadcasting an open, unencrypted message to both sides. Yippee-ki-yay! Nobody knew what it meant. Their tactics defied our doctrines. They attacked before clearing the skies. They dropped soldiers before securing the ground. They fought like they had no interest in surviving, only in killing. Their infantry units, flesh pilots they called them, operated massive mechanical suits with weapons the size of bodies. Rockets, cannons, blades, they didn't take territory, they annihilated it. Their light infantry arrived on rocket sleds, spraying chaff that disrupted our defenses, while their heavy units used knives mounted on guns to carve our soldiers apart. One human gutted a soldier while screaming like he'd lost his own child. When asked what he was thinking, no one could answer. We watched helpless as one of them picked up a severed arm and used it to beat another soldier to death. When our admiral asked for a TR, they raised the Terran banner over the last standing building as they torched the final Pankin stronghold, shooting anyone who tried to escape. Our admiral, stunned, told the human commander that they could take the next world alone, but they weren't waiting. "Send supplies," the Terran replied. "The next world's one jump away. Will be there before you're ready." And they were. Over the following months, human forces swept through system after system. 14 worlds fell in just 14 months. The tide of war had reversed entirely. Pankin forces, once dominant, now begged for terms. But humanity had no interest in peace, not yet. One critical question haunted the Confederation: would the humans ever stop fighting? They were winning with terrifying efficiency, and their rage hadn't cooled. It was growing. The galaxy watched as their fleets moved with precision and brutality. Solo operations by human officers became common. They launched attacks without backup, secured victories, and left nothing standing. Their demands weren't complex. They proposed that harming human children be declared a galactic war crime. Anyone who did so would be handed over to Earth for justice. They weren't negotiating, they were defining the new order. And the Confederation, unsure whether this was madness or genius, listened. A meeting was arranged between the Terran ambassador and Kalp, the representative of the Confederation. Kalp smiled, hopeful, and said the Pankin had offered to surrender. "Are there conditions?" the human ambassador Nobunaga asked calmly. "Well, no," Kalp admitted. "Then we're not done with them," Nobunaga replied without a flicker of mercy. Kalp tried again. "But we can still negotiate." "You're free to negotiate," Nobunaga said, "but we are not finished. They raided our homes. They murdered our children. A surrender to you means nothing to us." And then he smiled. "But yes, we can negotiate good terms." Then he cut the transmission. Pankin had hoped for mercy. Instead, they heard silence. Eventually, as more of their systems burned, their ambassador appeared on screen, worn and broken. "If we surrender unconditionally," he asked, trembling, "what will you do with us?" Nobunaga didn't offer terms. Instead, he listed what they wouldn't do. "We will not enslave your people. We will not destroy your religions. We will not occupy your remaining intact worlds. We will not slaughter what's left. You may even keep your government." A strange peace fell over the Confederation chamber as Nobunaga's words sank in. The humans were offering mercy, but on their own terms. In return, the Pankin would lose everything else. Space travel banned for 100 years. Their industrial capacity reduced to agriculture. Worlds open to immigrants from the Confederation, with humans choosing first. A 20 trillion credit indemnity to be paid to Earth's veterans and the families of the children killed in the initial raids. When the terms were read aloud, the Pankin ambassador collapsed, his body frozen in a posture of defeat. He had lived to see the end of his empire. "We submit," he whispered. "I know," Nobunaga answered. Then turning to the chamber, he added, "Now we are done with them. Now perhaps we can all live in peace." Across Earth, cheers erupted. But in his silence, Ambassador Kalp could only wonder, had they made a terrible mistake? Over the next 5 years, Pankin society crumbled. Stripped of infrastructure and modern support, they turned on one another. Civil wars broke out. Entire populations disappeared. Some regressed to hunter-gatherer existence. Others starved. On many worlds, survivors didn't even know the war had ended until humans landed and began converting the climate to suit their own kind. With no way to resist, the Pankin either begged for mercy or fled. Those who remained watched as humans built cities, reshaped landscapes, and welcomed immigrants. The Confederation soon asked to send observers to study how the Pankin were adapting and to ensure they weren't being brutalized. The new Terran Grand Presider, Jackson, allowed it. "Observe freely," he said, "but most will likely want to return to their homeworlds. They won't enjoy living under us." As observers arrived, the Keelan Confederation, Earth's first and most trusted ally, asked its own question: how were the humans colonizing so fast? The answer, when it came, stunned even their most advanced minds. Translation of their broadcast, the reply was chilling. "They say we're no longer necessary." Grand Presider Jackson received the transmission from the Keelan Great Speaker with calm confidence. The pale, scaled ambassador of Earth's first ally was polite but direct. "You've placed over 20 colonies on different worlds in mere months. We're concerned about whether Earth can sustain such mass immigration." Jackson smiled. "Our planet has endured great migrations before. We've developed systems to handle them efficiently. Our current strategy is quite effective." The Keelan leader, surprised by Jackson's calm tone, brought up a strange observation. "Your species invests heavily in a small number of young, unlike many others. Wouldn't this limit your expansion?" Jackson's smile deepened. "It would seem that way, but our children are capable of extraordinary things, even from a young age. Our colonies use 2 strategies. First, we clone citizens from our immense DNA banks. Second, those colonists raise and educate the cloned children. Every 10 years, each pair raises 5 more. Those children grow, then raise 5 more each. The Keelan speaker's eyes widened. Exponential growth, he murmured. Exactly, Jackson confirmed. In just a few decades, we'll have thriving populations. The war indemnities paid by the Pankin help fund this growth. Our allies provide supplies. The rest is human will. The Keelan was visibly shaken. And what of issues like inbreeding or incompatibility between colonies? Jackson nodded respectfully. We monitor genetics with mandatory DNA testing. Within a few generations, our genetic diversity will be broad enough that such concerns fade into academic curiosity. The great speaker ended the call quickly after that, but he didn't report what he had learned to the broader council. In his mind, the calculations were already forming. In 20 years, Earth would have self-sufficient colonies. In 40, they would export goods. In 100, their empire would eclipse the entire Confederation. The sheer scale of their ambition and ability was staggering. Most galactic powers spent generations planning colonies. Humanity planted them like seeds in open fields. The galaxy began to whisper of rogue settlers, unauthorized colonists carving out homes in remote systems, leaving graffiti like "Kilroy was here" on moon rocks, burning their presence into the very stars. They were explorers, pioneers, and madmen all at once. Who knew what they'd discover out there? The Keelan great speaker walked past his communications relay and saw a human book on his desk, a rare physical gift. It told the story of a woman who built an empire to save the one she loved, then burned it all down to avenge the ones she lost. Was it a gift? A warning? A lesson? He didn't know. But he knew what he had to do, explain it to the others, even as he feared what Fleet's Earth might unleash in 100 years. Back on Earth, Jackson passed leadership to Madison Maxwell, a grizzled war hero with a cybernetic eye. The cheers from Earth echoed across 40 worlds. Jackson gave his final speech with pride. When I began, humanity faced extinction. Now our children's murderers trade crops from broken worlds. Their empire is ash, and ours stands in its place. We have taken our place among the stars. Then he turned to Maxwell and handed him the podium. Terran, Maxwell began. I fought the Pankin before the war. I fought them during it. I oversaw their final relocation, and now with your faith I will guide us into the next great challenge. He raised his voice. We are no longer one world. We are many, but we are still one people. We've proven our bravery in war. Now we must prove our honor in peace. Light years away, among the Jinnian, High Lord Aven ruffled his feathers. Strange, he said. They replace competent leaders with new ones. Voluntarily, his advisors nodded. Yes, but they say it's routine, and based on their media it seems true. It works, one admitted. They adapt faster than any species we've encountered. They discard what fails and double down on what works. They're wild, unpredictable, but incredibly effective. And powerful, Aven added. 10 of their new worlds are already self-sufficient. Their cloning and education system is spreading rapidly. In 50 years, all 117 Pankin systems will be human colonies. The few Pankin worlds that survive will be surrounded. If they ever rejoin the stars, it will be as beggars answering to the humans. Silence followed. What does this mean for the rest of us? The High Lord asked. No one had an answer yet, but trade ministers were already proposing deals. Military leaders suggested withdrawing fleets from human space, not out of fear, but to encourage cooperation. They might even let our youth settle their colonies, one said hopefully. And as for the other conquered races of the Pankin Alliance, the humans had not exterminated them. They allowed surrender, banned expansion, and restricted weapons. These species were allowed to travel in Terran space as long as they remained peaceful. It was more mercy than expected, and more strategy than anyone realized. The foreign minister confirmed the details with certainty. This comes directly from Zalian observers. The humans showed ruthless brutality toward the Pankin leadership, but remarkable restraint toward those dragged into the conflict. Their strategy is clear: mercy for the unwilling, annihilation for the guilty. They've eliminated potential allies for their enemies. Now no one wants to challenge them, not for a very long time. The rest of the cabinet nodded in solemn agreement. "Let's not do anything foolish," the High Lord breathed, calling for new business. Meanwhile, across the stars, Grand Presider Maxwell met with High Lord Avan. The Ginian leader's translator delivered the message. "The universe is dangerous. You've defeated the Pankan Alliance, yes, but don't forget, we were your allies in that war. Your race expands rapidly. Be proud, but balance must be preserved. Other ancient empires exist. Tread carefully. Do not provoke them." Maxwell studied him, then asked gently, "You're saying this because I was a soldier?" Avan hesitated. "Warriors are warriors, but we never place them in charge during peacetime. That your people do, that concerns us. It implies your race values war more than peace." Maxwell remained calm. "Tell me, High Lord, how much do you know about human history?" Avan admitted. "Not as much as I'd like. I've read some of your fiction, like that tale about a slave and a prince who reshape empires through passion and brutality. Powerful story." Maxwell nodded. "Human history is a long series of wars. Peace has always been the break between two storms. The Pankan drove us into space. That was our first war. A second is inevitable." He stepped closer. "But I wasn't chosen to fight it. I was chosen to prepare us to win it." He paused, then added, "We love peace. It lets our children thrive. It lets us explore, trade, and grow. But we've learned the universe is just a larger version of Earth. Even you, High Lord, have admirals and fleets. Why? Because you know peace isn't guaranteed. Preparing for war is as natural as breathing." Avan's feathers bristled. Most intelligent species were ambush predators, social, slow to act, calculating. But humans were active predators. No biological precedent explained their rise to intelligence. Avan's xenobiologists had said as much. Active predators typically evolved strength. Or speed, not reasoning. What catastrophe had forced evolution to select for both aggression and intellect in humans? That question lingered, and the High Lord summoned his best anthropologist. The old professor was frail, feathers missing in patches, but his eyes gleamed with excitement. "You want to understand the humans," he said. Avan nodded. "They're becoming our largest neighboring power. I need the best insight we have." The professor sat and began. Roughly 200,000 years ago, humans nearly went extinct. A massive climate shift reduced their population to around 5,000 individuals, spread thin across a single continent, isolated by desert. They were omnivores, but they hunted in a way no other predator does. They didn't ambush. They pursued. The professor leaned forward. "A trained human can run all day, eating, drinking, thinking while in motion." They would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. Avan flinched. "So their long, brutal wars, it's instinct." "Yes, their species was shaped by endurance and desperation. Evolution accelerated under that pressure. Intelligence and creativity flourished because only the smart and adaptive survived. They were already social predators, but near extinction selected for something unique, a cooperative intelligence built for action." He took a breath. "Their brain structure, their communal instincts, their parenting, they all reflect this. They protect their young not just because of emotion, but because their survival as a species depended on it. And they tell stories. They pass knowledge with passion and permanence. Where other predators abandon or consume their weak, humans invest. They grow communities like living ecosystems." Avan was silent. "So how do we deal with them?" "You make them feel like part of your community," the professor said at once. "Treat their children as part of your flock. Show them trust. If they believe they are welcome, they will welcome you. If they see you as part of their tribe, they will fight and die beside you. But if they think you're a threat to their young, they will become monsters." The High Lord frowned. "You mean war, don't you?" "Some of their kind are already off-world," the professor warned. "Mercenaries, explorers, settlers feed their instinct to build. Hire them. aid them. Let their mercenaries return home with stories of danger on your borders and kindness from your people. They will defend you with more fury than they showed the Pankin. That's a bold plan, Avon murmured. We don't even treat the Zalian as full flock members. Then it's time to reconsider, the professor said. Humans are going everywhere. You must decide. Do you want to be seen as friends or as the next Pankin? The High Lord sat back, feathers rustling, knowing the professor was right. Are there any aggressive species left near human space? Yes, the professor said. The Zalians, an insectoid race, 6 jumps away, always looking to expand. Do you think they'll start a war with the newcomers? They won't unless they think they can win. And with that, the High Lord began drafting a plan to offer fleet support to the outer Terran colonies, a gift of goodwill and a quiet warning to the Zalians: do not test the patience of the war apes. The Zalian queen rested atop her larval throne, absorbing sensory data from her far-reaching swarm. She had no eyes. She saw through the collective awareness of her drones. Most signals were ambient noise, but her attention focused instantly when her scouts reported on the fall of the Pankin alliance. Like scavengers, her ships had hovered just outside the conflict zones, watching as the war apes dismantled a once-feared empire. She was intrigued, not threatened, until the aftermath. Terran settlers began arriving, one world after another. Once occupied, they broadcast polite but firm messages. This system is now under Terran protection. Vacate immediately. She complied outwardly, but her curiosity only deepened. She dispatched drones to question traders and ambassadors, seeking information about the humans. What disturbed her wasn't just their power. It was the way other species welcomed them. Keelan and Ginian patrols now mingled with Terran fleets. Systems once unclaimed were being developed, 2, then 3 jumps away from Zalian space. That was unacceptable. She activated her communications hub and reached out to the Terran colonial governor of the bordering sector. The human wore his typical blue uniform. Seeing him through her drone's vision was always disorienting. So much cloth, so much exposed skin. Your Majesty, he said, bowing politely. What do I owe the pleasure? Her mandibles clicked with agitation. You have taken a system we had marked. There are 4 worlds there we were observing. The human nodded. Perhaps, but now we have ships on them. The claim is ours. You will take no more systems near our borders, she demanded. The governor remained silent, then said evenly, all former Pan. Ken territory is open to Terran settlement. You have no claim, we do. She repeated her warning. You will take no more. His lips tightened. I take orders from our presider, not from you. However, I can offer a temporary solution, a 6-month hold, no further settlements from either side in the disputed systems until our governments negotiate formal terms. The Queen paused. Acceptable. We will observe the agreement. No ships from either side will land. Agreed, the governor said. Tell your presider to arrange talks at a neutral site, she replied. The message was forwarded to Earth. Grand Presider Maxwell, receiving it, contacted the Keelan and Ginian leadership to act as mediators. But before the negotiations could begin, the Zalians acted. Their colony ships landed on the disputed systems, exterminated the few surviving Pankin, and declared the worlds their own. The Terran response came not in words, but silence. At the Keelan Confederation Hall, the Zalians transmitted a smug message. The matter has been resolved to our satisfaction. The chamber erupted in outrage. Delegates called it a betrayal, a violation. Even the Keelan ambassador condemned it. All eyes turned to Maxwell, waiting for fury. But the human presider folded his arms and spoke with cold precision. We have a saying on Earth, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. He didn't roar. He didn't threaten. He simply laid out the facts. The Zalians exterminated the remaining Pankin on those worlds. They were no longer a threat, barely industrial, some even pre-industrial. The Zalians didn't need to do this. They chose to, and now they show no remorse. His voice dropped. More than that, they lied, they promised peace, then seized what we were willing to share. He looked at the council. We will remember this. Over the next year, humanity didn't retaliate militarily. Instead, they fortified. Genetic diversity was boosted through recombination. Thousands of families were relocated to frontier systems. Colonies flourished. Confederation allies were invited to settle alongside humans, strengthening bonds. Starbases expanded. Massive industrial investments flowed from Earth and its close partners. Poor and orphaned populations from allied races were encouraged to resettle in Terran space, boosting workforce numbers and interspecies integration. Quietly, steadily, fleets grew. The Zalians devoured the Pankin, many asked. So what would they do to us? The question fueled quiet paranoia and quiet preparation. The Queen noticed. She attempted diplomacy, reaching out to multiple races. We desire trade, we seek peaceful passage. But she found herself blocked everywhere, borders closed, allies silent. High Lord Avon reviewed a new treaty proposal on his desk. The terms were simple. In the event of an invasion from the Massives, Terran forces would provide direct military aid. If an enemy force pushed 3 systems deep into friendly territory, or destroyed 2 in succession, Terran fleets would respond. The only condition, no trade or diplomatic ties with the Zalians. Every border region around Zalian space received a similar proposal. The strategy was brilliant. They've bottled the Zalians in, Avon muttered. And they've done it without firing a shot. His old anthropologist laughed softly. They've used diplomacy as a weapon, just as they used war, a terrifying species. There's only one uninhabited system near Zalian space now, Avon said, and they just put a science station there. That means colonization is coming. Will the Queen take the bait? The professor asked. She's proud. She stole from them once and got away with it. I think she'll try again, and the humans know it. She's not that foolish, the professor argued. Avon remained silent, then signed the alliance treaty. The Zalian Queen stared at the latest reports with rising fury. The humans had not responded to her breach with weapons, but their silence was louder than any threat. Trade routes dried up. Allies ignored her diplomats. Even neutral species were now aligning subtly with the Terrans. She had expected retribution, not isolation. That unnerved her. Insectoid minds processed aggression differently than humans, but what she could not comprehend was patience. The humans were not reacting, they were waiting. That made them dangerous. Still, her pride wouldn't allow retreat. When a Terran science station appeared in the unclaimed border system of Varnock 3, she decided to make her move. A scouting fleet entered orbit and transmitted a formal warning. The system would now fall under Zalian protection. The Terrans, as expected, did not respond. 3 days later, the Queen authorized a full annexation force. Warships dropped from orbit. The small research outpost was obliterated. The scientists, unarmed, had tried to signal surrender, but their pleas were ignored. A single message was transmitted from the Zalian flagship afterward. This was your final warning. It was a declaration, a challenge, the kind she thought the humans would understand. For 48 hours, nothing happened, no fleets, no transmission, no protests at the Confederation. And then on the 49th hour, every Terran ship near the Zalian border turned. They didn't broadcast messages. They didn't demand surrender. They moved. One by one, Terran fleets entered the systems around Varnock 3, bypassing defensive formations with fluid precision. Zalian satellites were destroyed before they could transmit warnings. Their outer colonies lost communication, not in hours, but in minutes. Entire cities went dark. The Queen watched in horror as her empire's networks lit up in flames. Her generals panicked. Orders were chaotic. Engage them. Retreat to the core worlds. Protect the hatcheries. The Terran response was unlike anything the galaxy had seen. It was not a war, it was an execution. No mercy, no hesitation, no delay. Entire hives collapsed under orbital bombardments. Terran infantry, clad in adaptive armor, stormed bunkers with clinical efficiency. Their weapons weren't just designed to kill, they were designed to terrify. Sonic disruptors that made chitin vibrate until it cracked. Thermal weapons that melted entire hatching chambers. Some units carried flame projectors, the kind outlawed by every major race for over a century. The message was clear. You murdered our unarmed. This is your justice. In the center of her throne world, the queen prepared a final defense. She had believed her strength lay in her swarm, but the Terrans had broken the swarm. Her signal network was gone, her link to the outer worlds dead. She was alone. Then came the final broadcast, a single voice, calm and cold, Presider Maxwell himself. You killed our scientists. We gave you a second chance after you broke your word the first time. Now you'll receive no third. We offered diplomacy. You chose extinction. The Queen's final act was to open the vaults of her larval chambers, hoping that her species might survive somewhere somehow. But the Terrans did not hesitate. Their final strike came not from orbit, but from within. Underground teams detonated seismic charges that collapsed her hive from the roots upward. The throne chamber caved in. The Queen screamed through the minds of 1,000,000 dying drones. And then silence. The war was over in 6 days. Every major Zalian stronghold was erased. Survivors were few, and those that lived were found wandering, their minds shattered by the sudden loss of the hive mind network. Terran medics didn't leave them to die. They collected them, treated them, and transferred them to care facilities under Keelan and Jinian supervision. Let their dead be buried, Maxwell said, but let their living remember. Across the galaxy, silence followed. For the second time in a generation, the humans had annihilated a hostile empire. But unlike the Pankin, the Zalians had provoked this wrath not through years of atrocity, but by breaking trust and slaughtering innocents. They weren't just crushed, they were erased. And now no one dared question what would happen if humanity felt threatened again. The Terrans didn't celebrate publicly. Their war footage was classified, their heroes unnamed. But their message to the galaxy was unmistakable. We tried peace. You chose war. We chose to finish it. In the months that followed the Zalian collapse, the galaxy changed. Borders shifted without conflict. Treaties were signed without arguments. Even long-standing disputes were quietly abandoned. Everyone understood now, provoking humanity wasn't just dangerous, it was suicidal. But this time there was no celebration on Earth. The victory over the Zalians brought no parades, no flags raised in triumph. Instead, there were vigils, silent walks, names read aloud in remembrance. Not only for the humans who had died, but for the scientists who never held weapons, for the children lost decades ago, and even quietly for the enemies who might have been allies if not for their arrogance. Presider Maxwell addressed the United Terran Assembly with a solemn message. We are not conquerors, he said. We are not tyrants, but we are survivors, and we remember. The Pankin taught us that mercy without strength is meaningless. The Zalians taught us that diplomacy without consequences is empty. Let those be lessons carved into the heart of every Terran child. The galaxy held its breath, fearing what humanity might do next, but Earth shocked them all again. The fleets returned to port, expansion slowed. For the first time since the war began, the Terrans paused, not to rest, but to reflect. Billions of credits were redirected into rebuilding shattered worlds, some Pankin, some Zalian, some their own. Humanity invited species from across the stars to share in its new worlds, not as subjects, but as neighbors. They offered citizenship, education, even protection to orphans of enemy races. Let them grow up knowing kindness, Maxwell said. So, they never become what we had to destroy. And for the first time in remembered galactic history, the victors didn't demand tribute. They offered partnership. They opened schools, cultural exchanges, research outposts. They called it the peace of memory. A silent agreement across star systems that war, though sometimes necessary, must never be glorified. And as the years passed, something even stranger happened. Humans became mentors. Refugees once afraid of them now served in Terran navies. Young Keelan studied Earth's engineering. Former enemy races sent students, scientists, poets. The Terrans didn't forget the past, but they didn't chain anyone to it either. They built forward. The Confederation, once the galaxy's highest power, slowly adopted Terran models of governance and justice. Elections became common. Education became universal. The idea of protecting children, regardless of species, became the cornerstone of galactic law. But somewhere in a quiet corner of the cosmos, a forgotten probe drifted past the ruins of a Zalian hive world. Its signal, weak but steady, carried a message, a final recording, the voice of a dying human soldier. "If you're hearing this," he said, "you should know this wasn't how it had to be. We offered peace, twice, but you didn't listen, so we became something else. We became your lesson." The signal looped endlessly, echoing into the dark. And beyond the stars, in quiet systems where Terran colonies now flourished, children played. They laughed. They built. And over their schools, engraved into stone, stood the words of the presider. "They thought we were weak. They thought we'd break. They thought wrong.